Enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of light spinning from their mouths. Stop looking, listen for a little while. Pay no attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your tail
I missed the mute button. I swear I didn't not click the mute button. I missed it. It's hello, it's Cliff. Welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. It is Sunday, March the 31st, 2024. My name is Cliff. So glad to have you with us. I'm joined by Dustin. We're coming to you live here from Carter County, Tennessee. Just thinking about the eclipse has got everything haywire. All kinds of crazy stuff going on in the world. So glad to have you with us. We're going to get into some history of eclipse. We're going to get into a few, I don't even really want to call them conspiracies because they're not at all. They're true events, as you'll see, or they're true reports of some really crazy sounding things that are leading people to theorize about things. We're not necessarily going to get into what those theories are. I'm going to try to adjust Dustin's camera here and also change the thumbnail for the video. Dustin, what are some movies that come to mind when you think of Eclipse? Do you remember any famous films where Eclipse plays a prominent scene in it? I was thinking of Apocalypto was one that came to mind immediately. And I remembered there was a Stephen King book called Gerald's Game, and also in Dolores Claiborne, the Eclipse, both played prominently in those.
I think,
but I feel like there's got to be more.
if I'm not mistaken, isn't that a Lovecraftian-esque film, The Void? Isn't that? I don't remember if there's something that has to do with the moon phase for whenever those events start happening or not.
I don't remember. It was that where the couple's vacationing like on the private island and they meet all the cultists, or I may be thinking of something else.
It starts off like it takes place basically in a hospital.
Okay.
There's a bunch of cultists and a lot of weird things start going on.
Okay.
And it turns up straight up like Lovecraftian into like a cadet, like they get transferred into that. It's pretty wild.
Okay,
especially for it being like a low budget film. It's very, very well done.
That may not be the one I was thinking of, but I was trying to think of some earlier, and I pulled up a list of them, and there was a lot. I wasn't going to use it for the show, but so try to zoom in Dustin's camera here a little bit. I just set this up on the fly, and let's do this real quick. Nope, we can't do it while it's all active, so no zooming in for you. But thank you for joining us again, and jump in that chat. Let us know what you think about these things. We're going to go through a lot of it, so let's go ahead and hit it. I wanted to start you with Eclipse stories from around the world. If you can just imagine what it must be like to be totally ignorant of what this is, and then the sun is suddenly swallowed. We got that the sun is swallowed by something. If you look in the thumbnail of the video, we've got a dragon devouring the sun, which was common in several cultures, including ancient China. In Vietnam, the legend has it that it was a giant frog that swallowed the sun, and its master, the Lord of Han, then convinces the frog to spit it out. In several other mythologies, they have similar stories, and of course, eventually people began to put together, historians and astronomers be able to put together the dates where these events occurred and recognize there was a pattern to them, and they started being able to predict them even before they really understood the mechanics of the solar system and what actually put the moon in front of the sun in that particular time, so it blocked it out. But there was, like, in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, the Pomo people's name for a solar eclipse is the sun got bit by a bear. And they tell a story of a bear who goes out for a stroll on the Milky Way and meets up with the sun, and they begin to argue about who's going to move out of the other's path. And then the eclipse is the fight where the bear takes a bite out of the sun, and then I guess the sun gets out of the bear's way, huh? But the Kawaku, or the Kwakoulit people of Canada, they
just unbearable.
They hold that a sky creature, yes, thank you, Dustin. The sky creature swallows the moon, and they also will do like a ritual to make it unswallowed and spit the moon out or spit the sun out. That was another real common thing. And I remember there was a Mark Twain book, a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court, where there was he was sent back in time, kind of like, I feel like Army of Darkness, maybe a bit of a tribute to. My dog is in here farting it up. Either that or Dustin is. He's just blaming it on the dog. Yeah, he's the noisiest farter ever. I promise there's a dog under here under Dustin. So in Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court, he goes back in time and realizes that when it is, and knows what day it is, and he uses the fact that there's an eclipse coming to his advantage, and he's predicts it, and it starts happening, and then he tells them basically, "I'll stop it if you'll not execute me or whatever." And kind of, I feel like the moment when Ash arrives in.
All right, you primitive screwheads.
Yeah, that's pretty much where we get. I think that has to come a lot from the what you call it. The story of the King Arthur's court. Hey, there's Kim Stanley. Happy Easter to you too. Thank you so much for joining us. It is Easter, and no matter what the White House might call it, it's still Easter. And so today's the day that millions of Christians around the world celebrate that Christ is the risen. And we thank you for joining on this day. A lot of other stuff we could go into on the Easter holiday, and we've actually done a lot of it before, as far as some of the origins of some of those traditions and things like that. And I guess, you know what, one of the things we could have talked about was the Peter's Hollow egg fight. We mentioned it. There was a documentary about the Peter's Hollow egg fight up in here in Carter County, Tennessee. But they do that every year. It's pretty wild. But yeah, we're gonna get into a little bit of Easter a little bit later. But let's keep it going right now. Thank you for joining us, Kim. We're gonna get on to the tying together of the eclipse and Easter. Okay, so we're looking at really bad frame rate right now. I don't know what is going on with the internet there. I'm gonna turn off that monitor and see if that helps anything. And it does not seem that it did, but hopefully it still remains watchable. It looks okay on my screen. But let's keep it going through eclipse stories. In ancient China, it was commonly held a celestial dragon devoured the sun. Here's a picture of that. And
there's also a really good Swedish doom band called Swallow the Sun.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is probably the Swallow the Sun Norse culture. That's the picture right there. Loki is creating wolf-like giants that swallow the sun. And then there's another one of the giant chase wolves that swallows the moon, chases the moon, trying to eat it. But all around the world, there's different myths. But what is it, in fact? Well, it's when it lines up perfectly to where the moon will, the travel between the moon will, or its orbit will put it right between the Earth and Sun at just the right time to where it blocks a certain spot on the Earth. And you can have, last time we had the total eclipse in 2017, I recently found out that was the first total eclipse that we had in the continental United States since 1970. It's pretty wild. So let's go back to that just a little bit.
I think I fiddled around too long to get a filter to take good shots of. Even though, I mean, I don't have the zoom to get the quality of the stuff that I want, but
it might be hard to get one now on this short notice. Because people have been already fighting over them, or, photographers have been driving the price up on them already for several months now.
I only have 150 millimeters. It's not a whole lot in terms of things like the sun or moon.
Well, let's look at some weird. Okay, well, there weren't many during the 20th century. There were only 3 eclipses in the continental United States. So in 1900, there was a May 28th total eclipse in South Carolina. That's pretty wild because we just had an eclipse in South Carolina. And that was a real common place for them, actually. Oregon, Montana, and South Carolina seem to have more eclipses than anybody if we go back through the history of the times that we were here in the United States, or I guess you could say the New World. But in 1900, let's kick it off with a bang, right? Kicking off the 20th century with May 28th eclipse in South Carolina. The Paris World Exhibition opens. Boxer Rebellion in China begins. Hoboken docks in New York City spread to German passenger ships, and a fire engulfs the piers and kills 326 people. Carrie Nation starts her crusade to demolish saloons, and she was like a temperist, and then later. The Galveston hurricane killed 8,000 people. I don't know why they decided to include that. I don't think that's really related to the eclipse because it was not in the same time, just in the same year. Well, then in 1918, you had another eclipse, and right before that, you have June 8th, and then between June and August, you have the Spanish flu. It comes pandemic during this eclipse, pretty much. Over 30 million people die in 6 months. There was 100 Days Offensive that started on this, where the Canadians and Austrians basically ended the war, taken through the German front lines, and one of the final major battles. But then 1970, the March 7 total solar eclipse in South Carolina becomes the last solar eclipse to be viewed in the continental United States until 47 years later in 2017. This is also the first Earth Day on April 22nd, right after that, and Apollo 13 happened right after that. I don't know if it's on the same day or not. When I read that earlier, I thought it said that it would happen on the same day, but now I'm like, that doesn't even look like it's on the same day. So I thought that'd be pretty wild if the Earth Day and the first and the return of Apollo 13 were on during the eclipse, but now it doesn't look like it's like that. It just kind of makes it look like NASA wants me to think it's like that to make it sound more interesting. Yeah. So either way, from 1970 to 2017, we didn't have an eclipse, and then we have another one right now, and then it's going to be a good while before we have another one, I think. But let's go on to the next one. Back to we go back to ancient history, and where did they really figure this out? Well, back in 1605, Johannes Kepler, that's when he kind of figured out that the corona is light reflected from the material surrounding the sun, and they start to really understand after eclipses in 334 that these are, this is something blocking the sun. This is the part of the sun that we're still seeing, the corona. That's actually part of the sun, and they saw an eclipse during it. And as you go down, they discover new elements from spectroscopy. To back all the way in 1871, and they started figuring out what the sun was made out of. Pretty cool stuff. But let's bring it up to today. Brother Berg here on Twitter. We're going to check out his series of tweets here. And we're going to look into a couple of things he said, because it's pretty wild stuff. The Large Hadron Collider is restarting during the solar eclipse 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, and 6 days after the last great American eclipse, which my son and I checked those numbers earlier today, and that is true. You do have to count both days, but they count the day of the eclipse last time and the day of the eclipse this time. But I think that's generally how they do it with astronomical counting. While NASA is also firing 3 rockets into the moon's shadow at 3:33 p.m. As you do, Brother Berg says. The rocket project is named APEP after the Egyptian demon of chaos, who took the form of a serpent on his mission to devour the sun and plunge the world into permanent darkness. Consider this in the mystical context of solar eclipses as moments when the natural order is suspended and the veils are thin, creating a liminal space for magical workings. This rare alignment is a cosmic gateway offering a potent opportunity for transformative processes, whether for renewal, destruction, or revelation. How appropriate then that CERN is associated with Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction and transformation. Indeed, it certainly seems that dark wizards are attempting to pull off a ceremonial magic working of epic proportions, harnessing the power of the eclipse for a specific ritual, perhaps manipulating these energies to open portals, alter reality, or contact other dimensions or entities, maybe even all of the above. So that's a pretty big one. Yeah, it's just awful, Kim. I'm sorry. It's whatever it is, I'm dropping like 63% of frames. I'm afraid it just may be the internet tonight. Sunday nights are really bad not to stream sometimes for whatever reason, and we're dropping a lot of frames. Not really anything we can do about it. When the upload comes up, it'll be better. That's all I can really say. Hopefully you can still understand us and see the stuff. But I apologize for the buffering. We're at like 2.9 megs, which is not near. We need way more than that to run 2 cameras. I wonder if we cut off 1 camera, and do you think that would help it?
It might.
If we went back to the old view, but I don't know if I can even really do that on the fly. So I think we'll just have to roll with it. I'm sorry. As long as you can hear us though and see it, maybe pause it for a couple seconds. I've got it on a 10-second delay too. Yeah, see, we're just hovering right about 3-4 megabits per second. So that's not going to do it when we're running 2 high-definition cameras. But not anything we can do, really. So let's look at some of the claims that Brother Berg made here, right? So I told you, me and my son checked it out, the distances between the 2 dates. You can check that out for yourself. But let's look right here. NASA's suborbital rockets won't launch into totality. Instead, they'll go from Wallops Flight Facility in Wallops Island, Virginia, from where 80% of the sun will be blocked by the moon. That moment will happen at 15:33 Eastern Standard Time. So 3:33 p.m. That's when they're actually launching these rockets into the shadow of the moon. They're launching 3 rockets, and if you looked on the thumbnail, I made the thumbnail the comet or the comet dragon eating the moon. Let's look at the next photo here that he's got from Brother Berg. He's a pretty cool little, I guess that would be 16-bit art. I don't know. It's pretty detailed 16-bit art, but really cool. But what can we do about it, he says. As above, so below. Well, actually, let's check his claims before we go into the next part of the post. So he talks about Lord Shiva and the association with CERN. Well, this is on CERN's website, cds.cern.ch. On June 18th, CERN unveiled an unusual new landmark, a 2-meter tall statue of the Indian deity Lord Shiva. It's a gift from India, celebrating CERN's long association with India, which started in the 1960s and continues strongly today. And in the Hindu religion, the form of the dancing Lord Shiva is known as Nataraj, and that symbolizes Shakti, or life force. As a plaque alongside the statue explains, the belief is that Lord Shiva danced the universe into existence, motivates it, and will eventually extinguish it. Carl Sagan drew the metaphor between the cosmic dance of Nataraj and the modern study of the cosmic dance of subatomic particles. And it's likely that, rather than just being a mythical deity, that Shiva was a representation of the science that they had, that they understood at the time. And we've often mentioned on this show, we talked about the Vimana and kind of some of the other stuff that has been in, we've seen in different mythologies around the world. For a lot of people think it may be ancient weapons or aliens or conveyances, technological conveyances, whatever it may be. But I think a lot of it is metaphoric for, I've often said I think there was an advanced technological society on the earth, 100,000 years ago, maybe. Who really knows? As they showed on several different programs where they talk about how long our society would last, steel will actually decay way quicker than stone. So that's probably one of the reasons that the ancients built in stone, even if they had steel available for some of their temples, because that's going to weather the test of time a lot better than steel, which can be oxidized and broken down into nothing, and then there's no trace of it within 10,000 years. So some interesting things. They found lots of places where cities could be, and all these different writings like the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita describe, especially those are some of the older ones in ancient India that describe flying cities and advanced weaponry. And I think that probably did exist, and maybe a lot of their understanding of it was limited by their understanding of technology. So they did the best they could in describing it, and also did the best they could at making symbols to represent certain parts of the technology. And probably within that there was a sort of code or a language that those who had understanding of it could use to actually pass down these secrets. Because I think we're really rediscovering technologies and secrets of the reality of nature, or the nature of reality that we probably knew about a long time ago.
Or these type of representations where whatever calamity that caused the people to lose that technology, and this is just like a couple generations later, they still understand from what was been passed to them, but there's certain things that just don't make sense to that point of them, and they try to translate it to the best they can. And that's why they use these stories and mythos for it. Yeah,
and just imagine if we were to lose, all the technology we have today. How would you describe, you imagine in 10 years, you'd be telling your kids, we used to have this thing called the internet where, you could look up stuff. You could get information anywhere from around the world, but could you recreate the internet? No, you could tell somebody about it. And the people you told about having never experienced it, if they tried to tell their children about it, it would become more and more watered down from what the original description of it was. And you could, you can imagine all the technological marvels that we have today that if you tried to describe them to somebody, it would pretty much be impossible had you never experienced them but only been told about them. But at the same time, if I could draw you a picture or a symbol of some kind of to help you understand that, it might not be scientific, but you could also have have some kind of I guess you could pass on a limited understanding of the scientific principle involved also. And I think that's what things like maybe the tree of life and the Sephiroth and even the diagram of Shiva there, or dancing, they could all be different versions of technology that they're trying to pass down, like the soccer ball. Being the soccer ball shape turned out to be the pattern of atoms where the neutrons needed to be fired into to create the first atomic explosion. Like that was based on an ancient Kabbalistic symbol that now we put on a soccer ball, but how important that was, and I'm sure the people didn't really understand that that's what it necessarily was but certain Kabbalists may have, Oppenheimer may have, because he was a Kabbalah studying scientist, which a lot of those guys were. Jack Parsons, who invented a lot of the rocket tech that, pretty much we just use more advanced versions today.
Wouldn't have thought anything, but when the people that actually can go through and study and they learn like what their coding is, and they can be like, okay, this stands for that and that stands for that.
Well, I was looking through
go through what we have, what we know of this, which falls into line with that.
I was looking through a book the Secret Teachings of the Kabbalah that I had upstairs, and it was, if you look at a lot of those symbols of they just look like spiral outlines or floral outlines. They're actually representative of scientific principles and things. It seems like the Vitruvian Man of Leonardo da Vinci's famous drawing, where it's actually another one of those sacred Kabbalistic symbols that the man just happens to fit the shape of. So it's part of the nature of the universe, and it's a primitive way kind of explaining that and passing it down. But let's look at the next part of his claim.
Which it would be easy, because you're like, okay, the principle of this is human-shaped.
Mm-hmm. So
once you learn that and you can put that into it and you start seeing how the pattern works, you can recreate.
Right. Let's start. Are you wanting to be on TV? The dog wants to be on TV, I think, but he's a little shy. He's just down here shoveling our hands here for love. So the next claim that Brother Berg made, if I can go back to his previous tweet here. He also says the rocket project is named after Apep, after the Egyptian god of chaos, who took the form of a serpent on his mission to devour the sun and plunge the world into permanent darkness. So let's look at that part of it. Well, I know I have this pulled up here. Here we go. So this is from NASA, science.nasa.gov, so straight from the horse's mouth here. Barjataya, sounds like a Hindu name there too, designed the APEP mission, choosing the acronym because it was the name of the serpent deity from the Egyptian mythology, the nemesis of the sun deity Ra. It was said that Apep pursued Ra and every so often nearly consumed him, resulting in an eclipse. The Apep team plans to launch 3 rockets, one about 35 minutes before local peak eclipse, one during peak eclipse, and one 35 minutes after. They will fly just outside the path of annularity, where the moon passes directly in front of the sun. Each rocket will deploy 4 small scientific instruments that will measure changes in magnetic and electric fields, density, and temperature. If they're successful, they will be the first simultaneous measurements taken from multiple locations in the ionosphere during a solar eclipse. So that much is true also. But I wonder why they want to do it during the solar eclipse. They're going to do several of these through the years, and then here's the famous photo of the X as the way the last two. This is the solar eclipse, and this is the 2023 solar eclipse. So 2024, 2023 made an X. Let's look at where this meets. Yep. Right at about San Antonio. You know where it meets, actually, though? Eagle Pass, Texas, I think. Sorry, if I read that correctly, if I saw that correctly. So all this crazy, border dispute stuff that's going on. Eagle Pass has been one of the main areas of controversy, and apparently it's right here at this, right near where this eclipse happens, or right where the cross is. So let's go. So that much is confirmed. NASA is, they're firing those rockets up. 3 of them will be fired, and they're different times, but the first one is going to start at 3:33. So it's going to be 3 rockets fired at 3:33, 6 months, 6 days, or 6 months, 6 years, 6 months, 6 days, or 6 weeks and 6 days after the last solar eclipse, or after the 2017 solar eclipse, because there was one in 2023. So that much, at least part of it, is true. Let's see what else we have that he said. He also said CERN is going to turn their particle accelerator back on. Well, sure enough, they're testing the world's most powerful particle accelerator during April's solar eclipse to search for invisible matter that secretly powers our uniforms. Now, I read this thing. Now, I knew they were getting it pretty close already, right? I knew they were getting, the goal was to try to approach the speed of light and be able to crash particles together at like 99.999% of light. Yeah. Thank you, Kim. It's showing that we're getting about 10 to 12 megs up, which is not as much as we need, but it is better. So this solar eclipse, they're firing up the CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, after a while, after it's been down for repair and updating for a while, and now they're going to shut it back down and then rebuild it basically and reopen it in the 2040s. So this is the last time it's going to be running for a while. And the Large Hadron Collider, it crashes particles together at as close to the speed of light as they can. But I didn't know. Now they're getting them, but within 7 miles per hour of the speed of light, they're getting these particles. Huh. So it's 186,000 miles per hour, or 186,000 meters per second. I think that's what it is. Let's look it up real quick. What is the speed of light? Yeah, 299,000. Yeah, 186,000 miles per second. There we go. So 300 million meters per second, or 186,000 miles per second. 671 million miles per hour. That's how fast they're. For all intents and purposes, it's 671 million miles per hour. I mean, within 7 miles an hour of that they're blasting these protons around. And they're using protons instead of photons because they're heavier and they're easy to keep their momentum going as they go around the curves and the thing. So this is a track that is 17 miles long, and they're actually going to, they did a test the other day, and this thing did like 11,000 circles around the 17-mile thing in like a second. Let's see if I can find it real quick where... yeah, okay, there we go. It did 11,245 times a second when they run this thing at full speed. But so what they're going to do is they're going to run one around this way and they're going to run one around that way. Both of them within 7 miles per hour of the speed of light. Smash them together, and they're going to try to find this Higgs boson, what they call the God particle, which is it's a totally theoretical particle, although they do have lots of evidence for it. They feel like they've confirmed it, but they don't have like direct physical evidence of it. They just have, it's almost like it's a massive equation and they've solved for it, but they haven't actually found it, right? So they've solved for X and it's the Higgs boson, but they haven't been able to observe it yet. And who knows if they will, because it's supposed to be the particle that gives other particles mass. So I don't know enough about it to understand how they could see it, but that's what they say. And they're also on the hunt for dark matter, which they say makes up about 28% of the massive universe. Now, it used to be, they said, that dark matter and dark energy created like 90%. They said like 67% of it was dark energy. And, you know, energy and mass are the same thing. It's just whether it's condensed enough to be to be a mass. So I think, to me, that just means they don't either they don't understand the math, or there's just more. They say, well, this is dark matter, just stuff out there we can't see. or either that or more mass. Things have more mass than they think. I just think they're more ignorant than they think they are. my personal opinion. But they're going to look for dark matter. Never been seen or proven. It's one of those holes in the equation where they're like, okay, our model only makes sense if there's this invisible stuff out there that we can't see, which, I mean, to a degree, it makes sense because you think about how big the universe that we can see is. The idea that there's matter out there that is going to affect the total sum of the physics of the universe, it makes sense. I'm not saying that they're totally wrong there. I think that's just a fancy way for them to say we don't know and our math doesn't work, but anyway, they will be on the hunt for dark matter, and at 28% is a pretty big chunk that they can't account for, right? So either there is a lot of matter out there they can't see, or their math is really, really off. But the purpose of the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, is to let scientists test predictions of different particle physics, measuring the properties of the Higgs boson or the God particle, and like I said, it was here's how they describe it: a missing piece in the jigsaw for physicists trying to understand how the universe works. They believe that a fraction of a second after the Big Bang, that the universe was formed in an invisible energy field called the Higgs form field, and as particles passed through the field, they picked up mass, giving them size and shape, allowing them to form the atoms that make up you, everything around you, and everything in the universe. So if you imagine an egg, the cosmic egg that so many different cultures believe in, like, it's pretty wild that all these different cultures have an idea like a cosmic egg or a Big Bang or some central point that everything just explodes out of. And you think about that shell of that egg being the Higgs field, and as everything comes through it, then that's what actually gives the energy mass and creates the world that we live in, according to their theories. Again, I'm obviously not a scientist, but I have studied this stuff as a interested amateur for many years now, but there's a lot of a lot of weird stuff about there's a lot of like rituals coming down, been shown at CERN where they're doing like fake murders and like all kinds of stuff. They haven't denied that they did them, and they're like, so ritualistic ceremonies will say. There was the Goddard Tunnel opening where they did all these crazy dances and lots of different wild-looking rituals. So it's no wonder that people are uneasy about these people trying to tear holes in the fabric of the universe. And
when you ask them, like, it's just for fun.
Yeah,
we're just silly geese over here.
Yeah, we're just silly geese. Like we have the most powerful technology ever in the universe, and we're trying to. Remember, they were trying to create black holes, and I guess they said if they couldn't create a black hole with certain energy levels, then all their physics were wrong. But then they kept trying, and they never did actually create them, and they're like, well, I guess it just takes more energy to create the black hole. So rather than say that it's all wrong, they're just like, well, I guess we were wrong about the amount of energy needed to create this kind of reaction. So that's another thing they're trying to do now. And you remember when they first started talking about this, it was in all the conspiracy circles, but not just the conspiracy circles. It was mainstream physicists that were coming on the news saying, we don't think they should fire this thing up. If it works the way they want it to, it could tear holes in the fabric of the universe and create a giant black hole that sucks us all inside. And they're saying, no, it's not actually going to do that. It would be, limited. It would, if we did create a black hole, it would be so small that it would suck everything in within a certain distance of it, and then it would just dissipate. But there were real scientists, like accredited physicists, who were coming on TV and saying a lot of this back in like the early 2000s before they fired CERN up. I remember seeing them on there. And, they were acting like they were screaming Chicken Little and stuff like that. But it was a very real concern. But apparently nothing that we know of, anyway, happened in that regard. But
or I would in a big black hole.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe our whole universe is into a black hole.
I think you may be onto something. I think they're. You remember, there was a lot of people planning, claiming the world was going to end in 2012, December 21st, 2012, and I always said, well.
The Macho Man saved us there.
Yeah, is that when Macho Man died?
Yeah.
Oh man, he took the elbow drop off the top rope to save us all. Well, I wonder if there was a solar eclipse when he took that elbow drop. So to get back to the main thing here, we're done talking about CERN for a minute. I kind of went on a little bit of a rant there, or a little bit of a tangent there about CERN. But he's talking, Brother Berg. He talks about how solar eclipses have been revered throughout history as catalysts for profound change, symbolizing the dissolution of old forms and potential for new beginnings. As such, take note of all that no longer serves you and release it with gratitude during the eclipse. Its unique energy is believed to cleanse and recharge the realms. Now think about this. Remember these people in power in a lot of these places are occultists, especially. It's pretty widely believed or widely speculated that Hillary Clinton is a practitioner of the dark arts in many regards, and she said things.
Sacrifice things.
Yeah, well, she said so. She's not really been explicit in saying exactly what she believes, but there's a lot of stuff out there on that if you're interested in it. But Matt, remember, Hillary Clinton was supposed to be president during that last eclipse in 2017. So I think that must have been. I don't know. Can you imagine if you thought you were supposed to be like this grand supreme witch that was going to rule the world, and this eclipse was going to be yours, that you brought in your reign, because it would have been 7 months after she became president, and
Salacious Crumb wins.
Yeah, then Donald Trump wins, and he's like, they show that photo of him. She had to lose her shit.
Yells at cloud.
Yeah, he's like, oh yeah, there's the eclipse, and like they're sitting around the photo showing how dumb Trump is for saying that he just looked at it. But if you look later, he did look at it with freaking glasses on, like he was walking to his car or something and glanced up and said, hey, there's the eclipse. But they're like, oh, this dummy looked at it with no glasses. But anyway, I think that must have been a profound disappointment for the Hillary Clintons and her friends of the world when she was not president when that eclipse took place. But now we've got another one coming up. We've got Joe Biden, so I'm sure Hillary's not feeling any better about that. You talk about the guy that, oh man, he's got to be about the worst guy at the time for that party. I think they'd about rather have. They say they're glad because he keeps Trump out, but I don't know, man, because this guy. He's got to. I would not want if I had a ritual that I could only do like a couple times every 100 or 1,000 years, and I had Joe Biden leading everybody in it, I would be like, yeah, this is not going to work out good. But they are testing the most powerful particle accelerator ever during the solar eclipse. And they're looking for dark matter. So he's right about that. So Brother Berg goes on to say that that the veil between subconscious and conscious mind is also thought to be thin, enhancing intuition and psychic sensitivity. So a lot of these folks are telling you kind of this metaphysical stuff of what might be going on during the eclipse, and they could be right about that. I'm not sure. It's not my area of expertise, but they also call it about being the breaker of spells, and a lot of us are under a spell right now. So we'll see what happens with that eclipse. But another thing about it, you've got. Wanted to talk about, I was going to tell you about Alexander the Great, but that was a lunar eclipse. Let's look at remembering the World War I eclipse. During August 21st, 1914, when a total solar eclipse crossed over Eastern Europe during World War I, which was supposed to be the world to end all wars, but never did. And we're looking at physics.org here. But we're going to go to the path of the eclipse right here. Whoops, wrong camera there. Path of the eclipse. And it goes, if you can imagine, like this is right kind of where kind of World War I circulated around was, this coming right through here, and Eastern Europe, right on the edge of totality. And there was really the Baltic and the Russians and the Crimea. That's where the war really started, even before Franz Ferdinand was murdered. So right before this eclipse happened, or right after this eclipse happened, World War I started, kind of between all the powers in this area right here. Started right here in Belarus and Ukraine, which is pretty wild. Now we're having, of course, now the eclipse is not going through Eastern Europe this time, but it is going through America, which is heavily involved in Eastern Europe. And here's a display of two world embracing shadows. War. Come on. There we go. and it's showing the eclipse trace leaving a path of fire across Europe. And that's pretty much what it did. And so we saw instances of that throughout history. Really, eclipses and wars following them. Let's look at another one here. So get on to the Easter. Now, Good Friday has always been the celebration of. I mean, you don't want to. Sort of the celebration, but the remembrance of the crucifixion of Christ, because of course the Christians aren't happy that Christ suffered, but they are happy that he was crucified, and that was part of the prophecy that had to happen. So, was there an eclipse in 1 CE to 2000 CE? They say common area. I still say BC. Before Christ. That's what we all call it. 1 common area to 2000 common area. So they reckon in 2029 or 29 BC or 29 AD, 33 AD. There were 2 eclipses, right? So they now scientists have recently decided that Christ may have actually been born in 2 or 3 BC instead, and they've used these eclipses to kind of come to this conclusion. So they think he may have been crucified during the November 24th of the year 29 AD, or March 19th of the year 33 AD, because both of these were in right where he would have been in cavalry that crossed that area, right? Just 4 years apart. So the crucifixion darkness is an event described in the Synoptic Gospels. Those are the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. During the crucifixion of Jesus for roughly 3 hours. So a lot of ancient and medieval Christian writers treat this as a miracle, and but they don't find any contemporary references or any references from other scholars outside of the New Testament. So we don't know for sure, but they did find that those eclipses did occur during there. So as far as it is they say it's one of, so a lot of the things in the New Testament they say have not been created from the sky, and an unlucky darkness invades the world. And Odysseus dispatches the suitors not long after, even the bona fide suitors. He's bona fide. Poor Odysseus, man. I mean, he was he was a flawed man, but he was no, what was George Clooney's character's name in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Gosh, I can't think of it now. He's a Dapper Dan man, though, I'll tell you that. All right, so I need to close some of these tabs here. Maybe we'll run a little bit better. I got a bunch of tabs open, but we've got the RAM and the CPU to handle it, so I don't think that's it. I think it's a bandwidth issue. Yeah, we're going at 21,000 up, so that's a lot better, even though we're still dropping frames. I'm not sure why. Kim, you're right. That plan will fail. Evil intentions with the rockets, the creator win. If it is evil intentions, I think they will fail, because that was one of the things I was going to get into for the close of the show. There is a biblical prophecy, right? That the sun will turn black, the moon will turn blood as red, and the sky will turn black as sackcloth, and that is in the book of Revelation. Let's see, I've got the verse here somewhere. Here it is. Although I will give signs in the heaven and the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. It's also found in the gospel pronouncements concerning the end. In those days, now this is Matthew, Mark, this is Mark and Matt and Luke. In those days, after the suffering of that time, the sun will become dark and the moon won't give us light. The stars will fall away from the sky and the plants and other heavenly bodies will be shaken. And then there's another reference from James. Every good gift, every perfect gift comes from above. These gifts come down from the Father, with the creator of heavenly lights, in whose character there is no change at all. And the Father of the heavenly lights, there's the important thing. But anyway, the part of the reason that people are tying all this in together, because you have the eclipse that's prophesied in the book of Revelation and in the Gospels there, and there's this crazy ritualistic stuff going on during the eclipse with CERN, with the NASA rockets. They're sending up these APEP rockets that are named after an ancient nemesis of Ra, who was the god of light. So they could have called it just as easily called it Ra, or been the light side, but they style it after the anti-hero, the bad guy, the evil influence. So let's close a little more of these tabs here. So one of the things that people have also been referring to is the fact that the red heifer sacrifice. Have you heard about this? Been seeing this on the interwebs? Mm-mm. Okay, so I remember in all the way in high school, this would have been 97, 98, something like that. There was this guy that I went to school with, and I'm not going to say his name just in case, but there were like 5 kids in the school with the same name, and it was a really plain name, like if you could imagine, like John Smith or something. Okay, so this was a really, really common name, and this kid, he couldn't have been more than 17, 18. He reminded me when I talked to him, and I was about 16 at the time, of like a 40-year-old person that looked like a teenager. Right? He was a very skilled musician and singer. He'd play the guitar. He'd tell you all about scripture. And I was like, man, I think this guy might be an angel, because I can't even remember what he looks like, and he's not in the yearbook, and I can't find the guy. So I was like, did he ever really exist, or was I just pals with this angel? But he told me back then, like, about the end time prophecies. He was probably a Seventh-day Adventist or something like that, and he told me a lot about the end time prophecy, about the red heifer, and I'd never heard about this till recently. But the idea was that part of, and it's in the Jewish scripture here, the mystery of the red heifer. The rabbis consider the red heifer one of the greatest mysteries of the Torah. Even they wonder how it's possible that the ashes of the sacrificial animal can purify from sin and defilement. So the idea is, let's go up to the top of this, from the Messianic Prophecy Bible Project at messianicbible.com. The Lord Moses said to Aaron, "This is a requirement of the law that the Lord has commanded. Tell the Israelites to bring you a red heifer without defect or blemish, and that has never been under a yoke. This will be the lasting ordinance both for the Israelites and the aliens living among them." And that's in Numbers. And so part of what this is they feel like they have to, or they believe they have to, in order to rebuild the third temple and start, because remember, the Jews don't believe that Jesus was their Messiah, or the regular Jews. There's Jews for Jesus and stuff, but for the most part, the people who are, traditional, follow the traditional Hebrew religion, they believe Jesus was not the Messiah, so they're still waiting on a Messiah. But they believe that in order to do that, they have to rebuild the third temple, on which right now the Dome of the Rock stands. It's a holy site for Muslims all around the world, and they come and pilgrim, and that's in the second temple, which was destroyed by the Romans in AD 70, and that was after that the Dome of the Rock was built on it. So the Jewish people believe it's their destiny, and as they have returned to the Holy Land, as they were prophesied to, in the 1948, that was kind of a fulfillment of the prophecy in Isaiah 66. So ever since then, Jews have been streaming back into Israel from all over the earth, and they have been working to rebuild the Holy Temple. It says here, the main obstacle is that the Temple Mount is currently occupied by the Dome of the Rock. So, to fill the Bible prophecy, they have to build that third temple. But in order to build that third temple, one of the things they have to do is find this perfect red heifer, which is a cow that has never calved and has never been under yoke, and it has to have no blemishes on it, no spots, no white spots, has to be completely red. And they are going to sacrifice it in order to establish this new temple. So they started with preparations for the third temple, according to this article from messianicbible.com. Many of the preparations for the third temple have already been completed, including sacred worship vessels and priestly garments to be worn by the Levites in the temple services. As well, over 500 young Jewish men descended from the tribe of Levi have been trained as temple priests to fulfill their duties of worship and sacrifice. 404 when I tried to link that one for you. of the temple. But the temple can't begin without the red heifer. So from what I hear, though, there's been reports that there was a farm in Texas where they were growing these red heifers, and they shipped them off to Israel. So apparently there were so many of these things delivered over to Israel. So do we reckon there's something coming with that? Or are they trying to? Because if you go through the book of Revelation, I know we're talking about the Jewish and the Christian religions here, but there's that specific time where they opened the sixth seal and the sun became as black as sackcloth. And that played prominently in the movie The Seventh Seal, or The Seventh Sign with Demi Moore, if you remember that movie from, I think, 1988. But let's see if I can find the red heifers from Texas. You ever seen The Seventh Sign?
Nope, not that.
I have, but it's been a long time ago. I really liked it. So this is here's from the Jerusalem Post, right? So we can pre-mail. This is a reputable paper, right? A Christian farmer in Texas raised this is from Texas to Israel. We'll show you here. Texas to Israel, red heifers needed for temple arrive. A Christian farmer in Texas raised the prized heifers, which are essential for the priests to serve in the temple. So according to the Christian religion, they not only need the temple to be rebuilt too. Because that's part of the end times in the Christian religion. But 5 perfectly red heifers required for ritual purification of those who have touched a dead body arrived in Israel from a ranch in Texas on Thursday as the Temple Institute continues preparations to lay the ground for construction of a third temple in Jerusalem. The heifers are all under 1 year old, and they remain 100% red and avoid any blemishes which would disqualify them. So right, they're under 1 year old in 2022. So I'd say they got a limited time. While these, perfect heifers that they've never been able to find before will qualify in order to meet this, right? So I feel like they're going to have to start on this pretty soon if they still want these young red heifers that have never been yoked and not have any blemishes on them. They got 5 of them to do their thing. So they're taking. They're going to be slaughtered and rendered to ashes from their 3rd year onward, right? So. What are we looking at? 2022. This was September 2022. They're less than a year old. We're right on that timeline, right? We don't know how old they are exactly, but this eclipse would fall right into there. So the red heifers have arrived. Let's watch this. 5 perfect, unblemished red heifers arrived in Israel from the USA. Poor cows. I feel much better for a cow that gets, slaughtered and eaten than a cow that's grown just to be a harbinger for the end of the world. Yeah. But it's pretty weird, wild stuff out there, guys. What do you think about it? Do you believe any of this stuff? Do you think it's symbolic? Do you think it's I know there's people out there that believe it. They are not playing around. Well, let's look here. Here's that list. I knew I had a list of films up from they have eclipses in it. You got a 2001 a Space Odyssey, Apocalypto.
I mean, in 2001, like every time there's an eclipse, that's whenever the markers and pushes humanity to their next.
Yep, you're right. That's when the obelisk always shows up.
Yeah.
Then we got Apocalypto. We got Barabbas. The solar eclipse takes place during the crucifixion. They used a real eclipse to film the scene in February of 1961. Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. I didn't know there was a movie. I'll have to watch that. Dolores Claiborne. No, I was talking about Gerald's Game, the Stephen King movie. Had From Dusk to Dawn 2. Their Hellboy. Remember Hellboy had to, the gate to hell had to be opened during the lunar eclipse.
Yeah.
House of the Devil had to happen during the full lunar eclipse.
Yeah.
Kid Who Would Be King is basically a uses eclipse to empower the wicked sorceress. So a lot of King Solomon's Mines. They use that's a pretty common trope. Use the eclipse. The eclipse is coming, and use it to convince the primitive savages that you are a wizard or something, and can save them from it. Little Shop of Horrors, the monstrous houseplant Audrey II, born in the solar eclipse. Let's see, Pitch Black.
Yeah,
I remember that one. Rogue Wars, I wouldn't really count that one, but it is. I mean, technically it's an eclipse when that spherical space station flies over the city before it blows it up and blocks out the sun. That's a pretty wild scene. That's the best, to me, that's the best Star Wars movie since the original three. I think Rogue One is the best one. It's amazing.
It's based in the timeline of the original.
Yeah. I liked the prequels. The Phantom Menace was okay. The Attack of the Clones was pretty good, and I thought the Revenge of the Sith was really good. But as far as stacking up to the originals, I think the only one that really gets there for me is Rogue One. It's amazing. Just if nothing else, for nothing else than the scene where Darth Vader boards Leia's ship and is just walking through those freaking rebels, just like they're nothing. Just like they're, if you ever watch competition shooting where they'll go out there and just blast the cardboard targets, that's pretty much what Darth Vader does to those rebels when he goes through there. And it's awesome. And it makes Darth Vader way more terrifying than any other time you've seen him.
Like he should have.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine he was probably pretty scary to people, like, when they first were seeing that, in the original Star Wars, but I just kind of thought he was badass, but it definitely made him a lot scarier. So there's some, it seems like there would be more, but famous Eclipse movies there. So to close us out for tonight, I have a little something. Who's Very Evil, Kim? I missed that part, sorry. Who are we talking about?
Probably Clinton.
Oh, probably Clinton. Yeah, you're probably right. I don't know if we were that long ago or not, but I think Hillary would have loved to sacrifice the chicken to Moloch or something during that eclipse on the White House lawn. I think she would have just loved that. If you remember in her emails, she talks about sacrificing a chicken. I think she talks about sacrificing a chicken to Moloch during the lunar eclipse, or it might have been during the full moon. But either way, I know she said we're going to sacrifice a chicken to Moloch in celebration. And everybody just assumed she was joking, but I'm like, it could go either way. Could go either way. You ever seen some of that little jewelry she wears with all these little symbols on them and stuff? And remember, even Nancy Reagan had she had like a spiritualist advisor that's doing seances in the White House. I mean, it's been big in the elite societies of the United States, and I mean, not just the United States, but old Europe and ancient Britain. You look at John Dee, the Queen's magician, and one of the most famous ones that invented the Enochian language that they still use to, whenever they do their demon summoning and all that stuff. So you go a long way back, and all these people have been obsessed with this stuff for a long time. Today's no different. So, for the end of the show, I'm going to show you a little bit of local history, as we like to do. This is from a book I have on the Over Mountain Men, and this is about the Elizabethan, where we live. If you're not from around here, but you're watching the show, and if you are from around here and you're watching the show, then you'll know exactly what we're talking about. This is the headstone of Isaac Lincoln, and he had a patent or a grant for a section of land laying along the east side of Doe River near the James Robertson Tract. Isaac Lincoln later obtained most of James Robertson's holdings, and after Robertson moved to the Big Creek settlement, and Isaac and Daniel Boone were related. Well, he was Abraham Lincoln's great uncle, and when Abraham Lincoln, in his autobiography, wrote that before his father was of age, he passed 1 year of a hired hand with his uncle Isaac on the Watauga. So this is Abraham Lincoln's daddy, not Abraham Lincoln, but worked at Isaac Lincoln's farm on the Watauga. And this was in 1798. Abraham's father, Thomas Lincoln, lived alone that year in a log cabin at the foot of Lynn Mountain. It's said he didn't get along very well with his uncle, who was hard to please. Otherwise, he might have settled on the Watauga instead of returning to Kentucky. But Isaac and his wife were buried in the vicinity of Elizabeth, Tennessee. I think they're buried down there at the Carter Mansion, aren't they? I think they are. That graveyard right there? I'm not sure.
It's plausible, but I don't have the...
I don't remember. But there's his gravestone, 4 miles up Watauga River from Elizabethton, Tennessee, in a field. So it probably is not the one. Probably not in the Carter Mansion. But here is a photo of the cabin that Abraham Lincoln's father lived in. It's gone now. But that was at the base of Lynn Mountain there in Elizabethton, Tennessee. And if you remember, up at the Reuben Brooks farmstead owned by Dr. Daniel Schumeyer now, the Andrew Johnson death house is still up there where Andrew Johnson died. And they actually got moved around a couple times. But Andrew Johnson's daughter owned that place up there, the Reuben Brooks farmstead, and had him move in with her and stay with her while he was sick up there, and he ended up dying in that house. And then I don't know if it was for, they probably took it on tour as the Andrew Johnson death house and moved around. It sat on down near Sycamore Shoals for a long time. I don't know if you remember. There's like where Hughes Auto is down there off of West Elk.
Yeah.
Down where all the car lots are now. I think about where Y-Walk or Magic Ride Auto is. About that area. It was just sitting down there for a long time. And Daniel Schumeyer, when he bought that Brooks farmstead, he ended up moving it up the creek. Yeah, I think that was probably 15 years ago, 20 years ago, something like that. But cool picture. You see some around here that are still that old. There's one out on there's a cabin out on nowhere near this big, but it's out in the Dave Bucket Road area. It's like the cabin is almost, it's like 1798 or something like that. It's over 200 years old, and it's a little log cabin. The last one for the night, though, I wanted to tell you about the Watauga Association. This is the day, April 1st, which will be tomorrow, was the day that the Watauga Association opened a land office to handle the patents on the land along Watauga. So back in 1775, this was the first Democratic government, or the first white man's government, as they would call it then, on the west side of the Appalachians, was the Watauga Association. And it was all the folks who basically had moved over. They thought they were living in Virginia, and King George at the time had a proclamation that nobody was to live outside of Virginia or south of Virginia. And a lot of these guys, they ended up coming down across the line into the area of Kingsport and eventually into Elizabethton. And they were not trying to defy the king. They just didn't know exactly where they were. Well, they set up settlements here, and the king said, "Hey, you're not supposed to be living over there." And at this point is when they basically pulled off and said, "Hey, we're free men. We're going to create our own governing society because the king's all the way over there. And, he doesn't even know where this land is. We've leased this land legally from the Cherokee, and we're staying here." And that would eventually lead to the Battle of Kings Mountain, which was a turning point in the Revolutionary War. And if not for these guys that lived here and started the Watauga Association, it's a very good chance the United States would have lost the Revolutionary War. This was they talk about the cabin of Robert Young, Revolutionary hero who received a grant of land from Charles Robertson, trustee for the Wataugans in 1775. And this was back in this was the restored cabin as it's gone. Oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't his Lincoln's cabin. This was the cabin where they founded the Watauga Association, but it is gone. No longer there. But that's the sign from it. Picture of the restored cabinet stands on the original site. The book that I got this from is like 40 years old. But a lot of this stuff is gone, but it's the only way we have to remember it is books and talking about it. And like I said earlier, you think about this this technology suddenly gone, then how do we pass on these stories? If we lose the technology, we lose the books. If we were to forget how to do all this stuff, we would only be able to describe it in primitive terms, really. I mean, even as articulate as somebody like, or somebody who's well-versed in technology as somebody like, say, Dustin. You give Dustin 10 years of surviving In a non-technological society, I bet you'll forget a lot of, like, I forget how to use, how to go set up like a BitTorrent or a LimeWire file now. Like, I'm sure I can figure it out, but it's like technological stuff that I used to do all the time. I don't really remember how to do it anymore. Most of it not true. The cows are a sacrifice for bad intentions. You think so? I don't know. I mean, it's true that they're doing it. I don't know if I don't know if their prophecy is true or not. I know they believe it's true, and I think that's what's the most important part out of it. And I think, yeah, it does sound like bad intentions, because I know they're like looking for their Messiah and everything, but it's like, bring around the end of the world is what you're doing, like, and the end of the world is why is this such a good thing? I guess I don't know. I guess if you're sure about where you're going, then you might be ready for the world to end, or if you want to take over the world, then you might be ready for the world to end. So I don't know, man. Who knows exactly what they're doing? Yes, Kim was talking about Clinton. That's she definitely comes off that way, and you'll see like Chelsea wearing upside down crosses and stuff all the time. So like, that's intentional. Like, if you're dressed very nice, and then, like, it's not part of, like, if Dustin was wearing an upside down cross, it might just be part of his outfit. I feel like, like, because he kind of goes with that black motif, and I wouldn't necessarily think that Dustin, if I did see him wearing a upside down cross, was necessarily like a Satanist. But not that I've ever seen you wear that, but you see somebody like Hillary Clinton, and I definitely would see that. I might see somebody like a metal band, a guy who wears metal clothes and stuff, wearing that, and be like, oh, it's just part of the motif of the outfit. But if somebody like Chelsea Clinton, who's wearing, regular clothes, but then also prominently wears the upside down cross regularly, I don't know. I feel like that is intended to send a message. But that was a lot to try to get through.
Or you're just saying that you're unworthy.
Yeah.
To be sacrificed by like the cross of Peter, because that's why they did that. Cause
yeah.
He said he didn't want to be crucified the same way because he wasn't worthy of it.
Yeah, that's right. They did crucify Peter upside down, and so there were that's what I was going to say. There are like Episcopals, I think, that do wear the cross upside down. So I guess that's possible too. But I don't think that the Clintons are Episcopals. The Episcopal Church has like a lot of weird cross symbols and stuff that probably a lot of people see and would say they're satanic. If you've ever been to an Episcopal church and go in and look at all the different crosses that they have, they've got like Nordic rune crosses and like you name it. I think there's a whole bunch of different kinds. Broken cross is one of them that a lot of people say that one's satanic too, but then again, a lot of people say that Catholic and the Episcopals are satanic. I don't know. Who am I to judge? You go out there and make up your own mind. But I think it's easy to see bad intentions when people have them in their heart. The
one thing with they still wanting to raise a temple, you're like, how many thousands of years has it been, and your dude hadn't came for you?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Either
how long do you have to wait?
It's like either they're not coming, or you already missed that boat.
Yeah, and God got you out of the. I mean, God only made you wander the desert for 40 years, but do you think He would make you wait 2,000 years for your Messiah?
Over 2,000 years, then.
I mean, yeah, generations and generations and generations. I don't know, man. But maybe they feel like it's just because they haven't built the temple yet. Maybe that's why they feel it hasn't happened. I don't know. But man, it's a wild story. It's crazy, and there's a lot more to be said on it. But we try to keep these things as close to an hour as we can and try to get as much information in there. But this one was a wild one because it was hard for me to really structure, honestly, because we were trying to talk about so many different aspects of it. We from the Shiva to the rockets to the eclipse to Easter to the crucifixion, and I think we covered a lot of it. Just we kind of
inject a little humor and also poise. Are they dick-shaped rockets?
Oh, I'm sure they are. They're snake-shaped rockets, I'd say. APEC being a snake, yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised.
They like throwing phalluses everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's like I said, it is the dragon. I didn't even get into that. The dragon comet that'll be visible during the eclipse. It's another pretty wild thing too. It's a comet that only comes around every. Let's look it up. See how often it does come around. Yeah, Ghidorah. How often does the Dragon Comet transit? The Comet Dragon, March 21st. Mother of Dragon's Comet visible in the night sky. Is that the right one? This is from European Space Agency. Yeah, here we go. The Pons Brooks. Yeah, that's right. It's named after me. 71-year. Nucleus 30 kilometers wide. And it has been named the Horned Comet or the Devil Comet, right? And it's going to be visible during the eclipse. Right, so when it's going to be at its closest point to Earth in June 2024, but it won't be possible to see it then by the northern hemisphere. Late March and early April will offer the best opportunity. It will be visible during clear dark skies during the western horizon during the hours after dusk. If you're lucky, you may be able to see it with the binoculars or even the naked eye, but you have a better chance with a small telescope as its brightness is unpredictable. So keep a lookout for that. And I heard you will be able to see that during the eclipse too. So. The Mother of Dragons Comet visible in the sky, or the Horned Comet, or the Evil Comet. You know, it's like could they have spaced these things out a little bit? They had to put them all right there, all together. All the heralds of the end times are upon us. So y'all go figure, and then you got to figure there's if you really look at Revelation, there's the war in Israel right now. Who knows, Megiddo, Armageddon. I mean, it all kind of is going together, isn't it? But is it a self-fulfilling prophecy, or is that the way it has to go? Because it sure seems to me like there's a lot of people working really hard to make sure that these prophecies get fulfilled. Is that the same thing as the prophecy happened? Like if I prophesy that I predict that somebody will stomp on your toe tomorrow at 4:24 p.m. and then 4:24 p.m. they're like, oh, I made it through the day, and then I walk in and stomp on the door. It's like, is that prophecy fulfilled? Even though I'm the one that stomped on your toe? I mean, does that count?
I don't think so, but apparently.
But that seems to be what they're doing, right? They're like, we're going to put into motion all the things intentionally to make these prophecies fulfilled. I tend to think that it doesn't count that way, but I don't know.
I guess it could be like, exactly what you said at the story, and then maybe it's a power grab that they want to be like, oh, we predicted all these things. You know, like
they could be doing the trick of the Yankee in King Arthur's court. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's a different angle I didn't even think of. Yeah, they know.
With the stuff with it, you have to voluntarily give unto them so their evil plans can work with the laws of the universe and stuff.
The laws of karma.
Maybe if they predict a bunch of dumb people to say, hey, okay, well, you can do this. You predicted the...
I wonder how much... I just had to see if it was like... Cause it doesn't work as good for me.
It works pretty good well.
There we go. Now I got... I don't know. Sorry, too much fun. There you go. We appreciate you sticking with us. Try to keep it a little lighthearted, but it is some
rooms. We're just that good.
That's right. And I am going to work with this angle, so we're get this set up to where it's a little bit closer. That way we can have more people in the room and we can have more cameras on.